Hello and good morning, friends. Welcome to the CEC-UGC live lecture. Dear friends, with our ongoing series on business organization, today we would be talking on human resource management in the first half. We would be discussing on key concepts and functions of human resource management. Whereas in the second half, we would be discussing on employee and employers relationships, as well as we would be discussing on the various components of employee and employers relationship. And for this discussion, we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Vijay Arya. Dr. Vijay Arya is Assistant Professor in Department of Commerce, Shahid Bhagat Singh College, University of Delhi. So let's welcome our guest, Dr. Vijay Arya, and let's try to understand the two topics in detail. Hello sir, welcome to the DSET lecture.
Thank you, Geetika. Today we will be referring the human resource management, and for that we need to understand what exactly HRM means and how exactly it has been invented, its relevance in today's context, and the other component which are somewhere comparable and somewhere referred in somewhere comparison with the HRM, that is personal management, and the human resource development, that is HRD. So in going through this particular case, let me give a definition for the human resource management. It is basically applying the management principles, management aspects in the case of overall management of the human resources available in an organization, just to get the optimum utilization of the resources, that is the human resources, and to achieve the set aim and the goals of the organization. So there is one Flippo who has defined the human resource management, that is in terms of the planning, organizing, directing, controlling of procurement, development, compensation, integration, maintenance, and separation of human resources to the end that individual, organizational, and social objectives are achieved basically. So in this particular case, all the set of HRM, it means we can say that is the management aspects like the planning, coordination, staffing, controlling, and motivation kind of aspects are taken care in terms of managing the human resources. Now these are the two more terms which are interchangeably referred, which have a different meaning, sense of meaning, which is the personal management, which is totally a narrow terms. The limited scope is there because it is having in this particular case the labor is viewed as a tool, and the behavior of which could be manipulated for the benefit of the organization, and the drawback in this particular case is that it can be replaced when it was of less use. Now when we talk about the HRD, it is another one of the component in the HRM which talk about the training, learning, and development component of the human resources. Now in the case of HRM, the human resources are categorically referred as the assets, which are somewhere the capital formation, although they are not quoted in the balance sheet, but they are the value addition in the organization, and therefore it is only for the benefit of the organizations, employees, and the society. These are some of the importances which are referred while referring the organization. The objective are to be served. So here the some of the key importance are to hire the right person, and that particular hiring is for the best sake, and out of the best persons the selection will be made. Time saved in terms of not conducting useless interviews or the other non-relevant means of selecting the candidates. Avoiding the discrimination which may take place. So in the case of HRM, this is one of the important area, that no discrimination is there. Safety laws are well addressed, because in this particular case various legal procedures and provisions available are considered and referred. And the next importance is the equity towards employees in relation to the salary, the other benefits, etc. And in this particular case, the effective training is also referred, because this is one of the area Until and unless the upgradation, the knowledge enhancement and the skill enhancement is not there, then the employee will not be able to work in a proper manner or in a high productive manner. So in the competitive edge, this particular importance of HRM is very relevant as of now. And the another importance is to avoid unfair labor practices. If we refer the scope of the HRM, then HRM is referred in terms of the different areas, whether we may consider the employee motivation, employee maintenance, industrial relations, employee hiring, or the prospects of HRM, or maybe in terms of the employee and executive remuneration terms. Then we have the important roles. Almost 6 key roles have been identified for the HRM to be performed in an organization. The first one is the role in strategy implementation. The key area or the importance in this particular case is that to provide the competent workforce to execute strategic of the, the key strategies of the organization. So it can be, played, an important role can be played through the HRM. The another important role is in terms of the employment and staff services. In this particular case, important issues such as the selection, recruitment, promotion, training and development, the other areas, say payment of salaries, leave conditions of service, and job classification are addressed. The third role is in terms of the employee administration and monitoring, where the healthy and safe and productive work environment are emphasized or ensured. The fourth role of HRM is in terms of the compensation and benefit analysis. In this particular case, the HR department is ensuring that the fair wage for employees in accordance to their services given to the organization are referred. The next is the training and development. In this particular case, the different areas of the training required for the human resources are identified, and accordingly it is rendered in terms of organizational performance and growth and the development of the employees. In this particular case, it need to be emphasized here that the training is short term, that is in the present case, while the development is basically for the future prospect. The last role of HRM is in terms of the feedback and reporting, where one of the key area is to provide basically the information to decision makers on important matters relating to the needs and the performance of the employees. Now, if we refer the HR department, which is the key department in terms of hiring of the human resources, then these are some of the HR functions of the department which are there, and in correspondence to that, there are different responsibilities which are performed by the HR department. So we can have a detailed discussion on that as well. The first one is the analysis and design of work. In this particular case, what happened? The important areas as a part of responsibility performed by the HR department includes the work analysis, job description, and job design. In this particular case, the job analysis is there, where the different detailed descriptions, job descriptions, and job specifications are set basically. The second HR function is recruitment and the selection. In this particular case, recruiting and selection are taken care, which is basically part of the staffing in case of the general management. Next is the training and development. In this particular case, we have already referred the skill enhancement, career development, and orientation related responsibilities are performed by the HR department. Next is the performance management, which take care of the performance measurement, and accordingly the performance appraisal is worked out, and the discipline is again referred in this particular case. The next is the compensation and benefit part of the HR function, where the different components can be in detail worked out, which may include the wages and the salary component, the leave administration, and any provisions related to the profit sharing, etc., or maybe the other benefit, maybe the infringe benefit. Then the last is the legal compliances, different legal provisions, acts, or maybe the different legal frameworks has to be complied in this particular case. Then there are certain components of HRM system which are taken care in sequence. Initially it is the HR planning, then subsequently we have the recruitment and selection, which is part of the basically the staffing process. Then we have the orientation. Once the new employee is hired, then just to have a overlook of the organization, this orientation is required. Then we have the training and development part, where just to sharpen the skills of the newly hired employee can be enhanced, and if further required, some new knowledge can be embedded. Then we have the performance management, which is basically the performance appraisal of the employee, what exactly the established standards are and what exactly the performance of the employee. So just to have a comparison of both of these, and accordingly whatever changes, whatever suggestions, whatever implementation need to be taken care are addressed. Then we have the compensation and benefit, which is again the decision on in terms of the wages and salaries are decided. And in the last, the career development, the promotions and the other areas based on the performance can be settled. Now we have the two important functions, or in fact the functions of the HRM can be divided into two broader areas. One is on the managerial function and another is on the operational functions. So in the case of managerial functions, these are the 5 areas, which is post DC, that is planning, organizing, staffing, directing and controlling. In the case of planning, we are talking about the plan and research about wage trends, labor market, etc. And in the case of organizing of the human resources, that is the manpower. In the case of staffing, two components are there, that is the recruitment, that is the initial process before the selection is initiated, and selection is the one where the appropriate candidate out of the different applicants are selected. The best candidates are selected out of the n number of candidates. In the case of directing, necessary orders, instructions are issued in terms of to follow the plan of action which is set by the organization. The last one is the controlling, where different activities to be performed by the employees are well regulated. The another set of function of the HRM is the operational functions, which is having 4 core areas. The first is the employment part, which is having the HR planning, then the recruitment, selection, placement and induction, which is again the part of the staffing process. And the second component is the HR development, which include the training and development, and before that the performance appraisal has to be taken care, and only through that the training and development, career development and say skill development part can be decided and can be introduced. The third is the compensation management, which talk about the job evaluation through which the wages and salary administration can be taken care, and which also look after the different incentive which can be decided for a particular employee or set of employees, and the other benefits, say the bonus or the fringe benefits, which are not basically the nominal but the other conditional benefits can be given. And the last one is the employee relations, which is basically the employee relations. Now we can have the individual functions discussion in detail. The first one, that is the most important one, is the HR planning. In this particular case, the major area to be referred is the forecast of future HR needs. In this particular case, the existing human resources available in an organization are considered, and accordingly the objective and the strategies, that is the future strategies of the organization, are compared, referred, and accordingly a future forecast of the human resources needs are zeroed down. And accordingly, in this particular case, what kind of persons, what kind of people will be required, where exactly they need to be deputed, and when they need to be deputed, and how long they will be required, kind of set of questions are there which need to be addressed, which need to be answered through this particular HR planning function. And these are some of the objectives of HR planning, which although answer the previously mentioned key 5 questions, apart from that, some of the other objectives of the HR planning could be accurately forecasting, because if the information or the kind of sense of information is not well addressed, then it can lead to a kind of mismanagement of the human resources. Then we have the optimal usage of the existing human resources, or the one so-called the forecasted human resources. Then to properly evaluate the surplus or the shortfall of the human resources, just to understand where the kind of the human resources can be transferred, can be managed. Okay. Next is the recruit and retain right quantity and quality of human resources. This is another area of set of objective of HR planning. The second important function in the HRM is the staffing, which include basically the recruitment and the selection process. In this particular case, the idea behind staffing is to obtaining people with appropriate skills, abilities, knowledge and experience to fill jobs. As we have already referred, it includes job analysis, recruitment, the reverse part of that is recruitment, and the selection. So we can have look at the 3 different components, that is the recruitment, which is the process of locating, identifying and attracting capable applicants. The recruitment part is the reversal technique of the recruitment. In this particular case, the excess or the unwanted, or you can say the irrelevant human resources can be reduced through different mechanisms available through the firing, layoffs, transfers and the retirements. The last is the selection. In this particular case, the process of assessing candidate and appointment a post holder to ensure that the most appropriate candidate are hired. So the selection is the most appropriate process after the recruitment is over. In this particular case, the selection of the most appropriate candidate is taken place. These are the 3 important stages of the recruitment process. In the initial one, the first one is the define requirement. In this particular case, job description and job specifications are defined, where a detailed description of the job available are scrutinized, a detailed facts of the job are assessed and highlighted. In the second stage, it is basically the attracting the potential employees, and which take place through the job advertisement through different advertising channels. And the third stage in the recruitment process is the select right people, which can take place either through the job interview or the different ability test, maybe the written, maybe the skill based, or maybe the any other suitable ability test prescribed by the concerned organization. Then we have different set of sources of recruitment. It can be the internal source or can be the external source. As far as the internal source are concerned, they are the cheaper one. In fact, less effort need to apply, which may include the current employees, maybe through the references from the present employee, maybe the data bank of former applicants if maintained by the organization, maybe the retired employees can be referred on consultation basis, or maybe for enhanced, or maybe for the subsequent period of time. Then we have the former employees as well in the category of the internal sources. Now there are certain external sources also available in this particular case, which may include the advertising, employment exchange, executive recruiters, say the placement, company website, or maybe the different other pay-based website services. Then we have the job analysis process. In this particular case, the process of obtaining all relevant job facts are collected together and then separated in terms of the job description and the job specification. As earlier told, job description specifies the objectives of a job, the type of work and duties, which may include the job title, job summary, the location where the employee need to be deputed, the duties required, the different supervision qualities, machine tools, areas required, the working conditions and the hazardness of the particular job description. Then in the case of job specification. It is the more detailed version of the job description. In this particular case, the education and skill required and the kind of responsibilities need to be performed by the future employee are chart out and referred, which may include the training component, experience, education, communication skill. So these are the part of the desirable one, or the one which need to be there in terms of hiring the employee. These are the segments termed as the selection process. So initial 6-1 are the stages where if the candidate is not suitable, then they will be basically rejected. They will not be considered for the subsequent steps. So the first one is the application form screening and preliminary interviews. The second is the selection test. Third is the employment interview, that is the detailed one. Then the reference and background information gathering and testing whether the information quoted is genuinely correct or not. Next is the selection decision, and after that, once the selection decision is okay, then the medical examination is referred, and then the job offer is made, and at the last, when the offer is accepted, the employee is basically hired and the employment contract is signed between the organization and the employee. Then this is the another stage. Once the employee is hired or engaged, then the orientation is required, which is nothing but the introduction of the employee with the organization. That is in terms of the introduction to the job, introduction to the organization, introduction to the culture of the organization, introduction to the different departments. And in this particular case, 3 key information are conveyed, in fact communicated. That is the basic information about daily work routine. Second is the organization history, purpose, operations and products or services that are being referred, and the contribution of employees expected in this particular case are communicated. The third is the presentation of organization's policies, work rule and employee benefit. These are the another area which is part of the orientation. Then we have the training and development part, which is basically taken care after the performance appraisal is call out. In this particular case, the training and development is the area which is there in terms of improving the productivity by increasing an employee's ability to perform. So we have divided it into 2 parts. The training is basically the short-term skills. The developmental program are the long-term abilities enhancement. So in the case of training, it is to improve the current job conditions or the performance, but in the case of development programs, it is for the future work activities. Now these are some of the activities which can be taken care in terms of addressing the training and development, which may include the orientation, on the job training or the off the job training, apprenticeship, internships, online training, simulation training, which is basically a different form of the training, the case study approach, coaching, job rotations, video presentation and the lecture. Then this is one of the important area we need to discuss about the performance appraisal. It is basically a kind of comparison of the established standards with reference to the different job description, job analysis and job specification set at the initial stage. In this particular case, it is required in terms of having the promotions, compensation and training for the employee. So this is must, this is very relevant component of the human resource management. And in this particular case, the process of systematically evaluating performance and providing feedback upon which performance adjustment can be made. So this is this may be of 2 different types. Maybe the informal one, which is basically continuous feedback, where the employee is continuously assessed through the performance appraisal and accordingly intimated what changes, what the kind of feedback is received in this particular case and what kind of the changes may be required. And the another is the formal one, which is not the continuous process. Maybe from time to time it changes. Different persons are taking care of the performance appraisal. Maybe different variables are there. We will be discussing, say, the job knowledge, attitude, the punctuality, creativity, work quality, cooperation, say dependability, communication skills, responsiveness. These are some of the important variables which are taken care in terms of working out the performance appraisal, and there are certain important steps which are part of the performance appraisal, which may include the establishing performance standards that are understandable, measurable, and reasonable too. Another could be the clearly communicating those standards to the employee for which the performance appraisal is to be done. Third could be the evaluating performance against the standard. So this is basically the comparison of the established standards and the actual performance of the employees. Next could be the discussing the result with the employee. So whatever the third result is, it need to be shared with the employees. Then taking corrective action, maybe through the training, development, maybe transfer, maybe any other improvement provision are there that need to be applied. And the last one is the using the results to make decisions. Now, the last important function in the human resource management is the compensation and benefits. In this particular case, the benefits of a fair, effective, and appropriate compensation system need to be devised, which is nothing but helping the organization in terms of attracting and retaining the high performance employees, and it is having another impacts on the strategic performance of the firm, which is basically a long-term perspective for an organization of performing in a better manner. Then these are some of the 4 important type of compensation which are taken care, include the wage and salary add-ons, incentive payments, skill-based pay, and base wage or salary. So this is all about the human resource management, and we can have a kind of summary what we have discussed today in this particular session. We have referred the different key components of the human resource management, which are basically the HR planning, performance appraisal we have referred. Then we have referred the different type of performance appraisal. Different important steps need to be taken care in terms of the performance appraisal. We have also referred the kind of HR functions, the important functions, which include the training and development part, and the other important selection process we have referred. So ultimately, if we just sum up through this particular case, then human resource management is a much broader term, and as of now, it is again referred in terms of the strategic human resource management, because this is something which is correlated with the strategies, which is the area, because after the globalization, now it is very important to compete with the world. You have to retain, as an organization, the organization has to retain the best talent, and this best talent can be retained when they have the competitive edge, all the facilities, and all the most appropriate means and methods applying through the human resource management. That is the effective human resource management, and that is the strongest part which the HR department can perform. And in this particular case, different source of recruitment we have referred, maybe the internal sources, the external sources, and as well as the other important components, see the job description, job specifications, where different in detail information of the job has been charted out, which include the experiences, the training, the education component, the skill requirement, and say the job summary, duties, and the responsibilities that need to be performed by the employee in terms of if they are hired for the organization. We have also referred the orientation part, which basically the introduction of the newly recruited employee towards its duties, towards the history, towards the working conditions of the organization, towards the department in which the particular employee will be absorbed and will be working, and the working conditions and the other terms and conditions of the organizations for the betterment. We have also referred the recruitment process, which basically defining the requirement, which we have already referred, that is the job description, which is the narrow information that need to be reflected, and the detailed one is the job specifications. Then we have also referred the different ways of attracting the potential employees, that is the job advertisement and the other means of disseminating the information through which the application can be sought and it can be finally screened out. Then we have also referred the selection process and the different rejection mechanism. When one candidate is not able to pass on to the next stage, then obviously the candidate will be rejected, kind of thing. So that process we have also referred. So in this particular case, the important functions we have referred and the detailed important key components of the HRM are also referred. Now, this is all for now. We can have another session of the HRM, which will be talking about the basic dynamics of the employer and employee relations and the different innovative practices referred in today's 21st century, the topmost corporate houses about the human resource management, its effectiveness. So that will be referring shortly. Hello. In this particular session, we'll be referring the human resource management and the basic dynamics of the employer and the employee relations. In this particular case, it need to understand the different models that we will be referring in today's session. That is the perfect model, the polarization model, that is the cooperative model, and the cooperative model. Apart from that, we will also be referring the importance of the strong employer and employee relations, how it can be established in a better manner, and the different other key important terms or the objects that are referred in the effective or a better, stronger employer and employee relations, which may include the collective bargaining, quality circles, and the trade union component. So now we can move ahead with set of example. If you can refer some of the innovative corporate practices, then these are some of the very recent examples have been collected. In the case of Google, you will find that they have the very flexible work hour for the employees, and as well as they have the world-class facilities in terms of stress management and in terms of the other facilities required for, say, the meditation or the other things, so that the employee can work in a better way in a good environment. In the case of Wipro, they have the another innovative practice, which is another part of the HRM, where they take care of the exit interviews in case an existing employee leave the organization. So this is just to understand what went wrong, what better opportunities that particular employee is looking for, and in this particular case, the existing employer or the one who is taking the interviews are assisting the outgoing employee for the betterment or for the better opportunities. In the case of Toyota or the British Airways, this is another better corporates which are having the scheme called the employee suggestion scheme, where they are welcoming the employees in terms of giving the suggestion to the employer. It is collected, and the best scheme, best suggestion given by the employee are considered. So in the case of Toyota, near about 5 lakh sessions are received on an average in a year, and out of that nearly 95% suggestions are implemented, which means near about 5,000 improvements a day. So this is another unique features of this particular HRM practices referred by the Toyota. In the case of British Airways, the employee session helped the company in terms of cutting down the cost by 4.5 million pound. In the case of Ford, another good example of human resource management, where highly disciplined culture, outstanding training opportunities, and strong and consistent processes are introduced. In the case of LinkedIn, the company organizes the parties, complete with live music and other good atmosphere to reward staff members for their hard work for the company. So these are some of the selected example. So just to set the tone of today's discussion, we can have this conclusion or a kind of part where we can make it important that employer and employee, if are having good and the cordial relations, and their relationship is very strong enough, then it is good for the society, good for the employer and employee, as well as for the organization, because it is somewhere a good organization. So therefore now we can have a discussion on the important HRM framework, which is the base for the employer and employee relation. As you can see in this particular diagram, 3 blocks have been made. The first one is the competitive challenges. These are the different challenges which are there in the market. Maybe the globalization, technological change, the human capital, and the responsiveness and the cost control issues. So through these particular important competitive challenges, it need to understand that the human resources, that is post-DC, that is planning, staffing, recruitment, job designing, training and development, performance appraisal, compensation and benefits, and labor relations, need to play an important role so that the employee concerned, which may have the background diversity, the age distribution, the different gender issues, education levels, maybe the employee rights, privacy issues, work attitudes, and family concern can be addressed through the human resource management. Now we can have a view on the employer-employee relation. This particular concept is defined in terms of establishing the meaningful or the sensible interplay of the necessary processes in which the maintaining the relationship between employee and the management. So in this particular case, it is positive, it gives positive result if the relation is very strong, and it gives the negative result if the relationship between the employer and the employee is weak. So if we look at the perspective of two different entities in the human resource management, that is the employer and the employee, then we will find then it is a reverse relationship. Say the employer thinks what employee want to get out of working. So in this particular case, employee is looking or trying to explore what kind of expectation the employee would have. And on the reverse side, the employee is having a kind of perspective in terms of thinking what is employer expectation from his employees. So one entity is thinking about the other entity in terms of what the expectation the other party will be. So in this particular case, if we have a detailed expected rights of employee and the employee, then we will find interestingly that the employer will be looking forward or will be having these rights as expected rights. So it may be to conduct the business, to decide the different rules, these rules just to run the business in an efficient manner, and right to select and hire the employees, right to transfer or say discharge the employee, that is the existing employee, and right to discipline, to maintain the discipline of employee. So these are the expected rights of the employer. Now if we look at the employee rights, that is the expected employee rights, then we will find that they are looking for the right of security in terms of the tenure, that is the permanence job security, then the right of suitably paid salary or the wages, then the right to share in the profits. So whatever contribution they are making, they are looking forward for the having the share in that. Then the human working conditions, that is somewhere health sensitive rights. Then the self-organization, collective bargaining, and right to strike. If their objective are not served, then they would like to have the right to strike as well. And the last is the participation in policy and decision making processes, as we have seen in the case of the Toyota or the British Airways as such. These are some of the important parties which are involved in the employer and employee relations. So initially two parties have to be there, that is the employer and the employee. Apart from that, different organization, maybe the government, maybe the HR functions, the HR department, International Labour Organization, that is the ILO, employee associations, which may include say FICCI, SOCHM are some of the employee associations. Employee associations are also there. Courts and tribunals are there. In case any dispute arises between the two parties, can be referred to the court and the tribunals. Now we have to refer the importance of strong employer and employee relations. In this particular case, a better or say strong employer and employee relations are relevant in terms of achieving the higher profit levels, in terms of achieving the better efficiency out of the working, more productivity, and lesser conflicts. So if there is a better employer and employee relation, then obviously it will lead to the less conflicts between the two, more loyal towards the organization, this is the expectation and will have a importance in this particular case. Then better customer services, higher quality product, and the organizational growth. These are the some of the importance if there is a strong employer and employee relations. Now, how this strong employer and employee relation can be established? So it can be established either through or say all of these important concepts. Say regular interaction. So if the employee and employees are having regular interaction, so whatever disputes, whatever conflict they may have can be sorted out then and there. Then communicate openly, appreciation culture, constant feedback, and employee suggestion policy. So which we have seen in our two of the example are there or are also basically also there. Then resolving problem in time bound manner, not to keep this linger on but to resolve it in a time bound manner is again important thing which can establish a strong employer and employee relations. Then different compliance to different legal framework are also there, also play important role, and the concept over employee family, health and safety issues are also need to be addressed in terms of building the strong employer and employee relations. Now this is a typical employer and employee relation framework. In this particular case, you can see the top arrow is having three components: the social justice, equity and rights and duties. This is basically the employee level entities, and at the same time at the bottom this particular arrow is again having three different components, that is the industrial democracy, productivity, industrial peace. So this is at the employer end, at the employee level, and these two entities, say the employee level and the employer level, can have a better cordial relations through these enterprise level framework, which include the collective bargaining, effective grievance mechanism and the employee representation. So after achieving the objective through these particular three important enterprise level framework, the organization can achieve the social development and progress. Now we can have a look these three different variables in the case of employee level, three different variables in the case of employer level, and three different variables in the case of enterprise level framework. So in this particular case, the key factors are the social justice, which talk about the labor, the protection of labor in terms of enhancing the human dignity. The second is the reducing the social, economic and political inequalities, which are the key concern. Therefore, the social justice also addresses this particular issue. The second important factor is the equity. In this particular case, the proper incentive, compensation and personal satisfaction are addressed as the key factors. The third key factor in the case of employee level framework is the rights and duties. So different legal framework, including the labor laws, are there to protect the rights and duties of the employee. As far as the employer level framework is concerned, it is again having three different entities, which include the industrial democracy, which is basically free bargaining and negotiation, which is basically the employer and employee level negotiation. Then the voluntary settlement of dispute. The second factor is the productivity, which talk about the efficiency and the reasonable return on investment and the growth. The third key factor in the case of employer level framework is the industrial peace, which refer the harmonious relations and the social development and progress. So these two different employer and the employee level framework can be settled down only through three important factors, that is the employee representation, and which can take place only through the unions, labor organization and the associations. Here the association is from both the associations, that is the employee associations as well as the employer associations. Then another important factor is the collective bargaining, which talk about the different terms and conditions of employment collectively decided by a group of people on behalf of the individual of the organization. Then third is the effective grievance mechanism, just to avoid any conflict arising, that is the conflict resolution. Now in this particular case, we can also refer the different legal provisions available in India in terms of settling the dispute arising between the employer and the employee. So these are some of the legal frameworks, that is the acts enacted, which have a different set of objective in terms of resolving the disputes. One is the Trade Union Act 1926, which helps in registering the trade union and giving them legal status and immunity. In case if any dispute arises, then they are termed as the legal entity and can pursue any legal case against the organization. Then second act is the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So any investigation and settlement of industrial dispute can be referred, that is the set of objective of this particular act. Third is the Payment of Wages Act, which look after the benefit and the wages for the employees. So this look after the regulation or the regulating the payment of wages to employees. Next we have the Factories Act, which is basically the which ensures the better working conditions for the employees who are basically working in the industrial establishment. And next is the Employees Compensation Act 1923. This is another set of act which provide the social security to workers in terms of compensation in case of death or the disablement. Now these are some of the 4 important models of employer and employee relations. The first one is the perfect, second is polarization, third is cooperative, and fourth is the co-optive. As far as the first perfect model of ER and EE relation is concerned, this is something which create no conflict between the two. It is more of the desirable one, and in this particular case even the labor union or the trade union are deemed to be unfit or basically unnecessary in this particular case, because they are having no conflict provision as such, no conflict arises, and the interest of both, that is the employer and employee, are set together. And in fact this is considered as one happy family where employer and employees all share common purpose, emphasizing mutual cooperation. And in this particular case the employees are considered loyal, and therefore as a result trade unions are not required or in fact not considered in this particular case. Now if we look at the another model of the employer and employee relation, then we have the polarization. This is something based on the Marxist or the capitalist approach, where in fact the interest of the employee are not that much relevant or given the emphasis. In fact the interest of employee and employer are completely opposite to each other, and in this particular case the conflict is therefore inherent, and the trade unions play a very active role in this particular case to look after the any dispute. They play an active role. Now we have another model, that is the cooperative model of ER and EE relations. In this particular case no conflict of interest in common areas like the profitability and survival of the organization is there. So this is similar to the perfect one, but having slightly different way of approach in this particular case. In this particular case the role of management is more inclined towards encouragement and coordination of the employees with the organization, and it is having a mixed perspective where both employer and employee have their own set of objectives and leaders. In this particular case the trade unions are deemed as legitimate representative of employees, and here comes the role of the collective bargaining in case of any conflict if arises. The last is the co-optive model of employer and employee relation. In this particular case the workers' interest are suppressed to management interest. This is although similar to the perfect model of the ER and EE relations, but in this particular case the labor unions are highly inclined towards the organization, therefore they are termed as the company union, where it signs a sweetheart contract with the management just for show with no substantial concession granted. Therefore these trade unions are more favored by the organization, and therefore they won't play the active role as such desired from them. Now this is one of the important area need to be discussed in detail, that is the collective bargaining. In this particular case, we have to refer to entities, that is the individual bargaining and the collective bargaining. In the case of individual bargaining, when an individual negotiate for its own pay, the working conditions with the employee, in fact with the employer, then it is termed as the individual bargaining, because in this particular case that particular employee is alone. He has to negotiate for his own pay and the working conditions. Now when some set of individuals come together in a group, and they decide to form a group, say the trade unions, and they assign the task of negotiation through the trade unions, then this particular bargaining through those unions will be termed as the collective bargaining, because in this particular case the workers allow the union to negotiate on their behalf. Now the collective bargaining is highly flexible method of decision making as compared to legislative, judicial or any public administrative process, because in this particular case what is happening, it is the trade union who is negotiating on behalf of the individuals or the group of people who are working in an organization for the organization, and basically in this particular case it applies the equity or social justice to the work environment. It also ensures the participation of employees in policy and decision making, which we have seen in the case of the Toyota as well, and it also resolves grievance and disputes in the workplace if arises from time to time. Then we have the another important process within the collective bargaining. In this particular case, if any dispute arises, then at the initial stage the preparation of negotiation started, which lead to the bargaining issues. Different issues need to be reflected and can be negotiated with the organization. So in this particular case what is happening, the trade unions are negotiating with the employer, and that is on behalf of the different employees or the set of employees. So in this particular case there are two possibilities. One is either the negotiation breakdown or it reaches to an agreement, the consensus may be established. So in case if the breakdown is there, the negotiation breakdown is there, then it can lead to the overcoming breakdown and there will be the conflict will be resolving. And if the other way, the other response could be that the conflict is not resolved. So in this particular case it is reaching out to the agreement, where the ratifying the agreement process started and it ultimately lead to the administration of the agreement. The another important aspect is the quality circles. In the case of quality circles, it is basically a set of few workers who are working together say on regular basis, and they are basically trying to address or try to suggest in terms of improving the quality of the product or in terms of addressing some of the problems maybe occurring in an organization, and they are basically imaginative solutions. They may provide the imaginative solutions to business problem are basically the quality circles. So in today's time, quality circles are highly emphasized and also referred these days. The last one we may refer the trade unions. The trade unions are again the representation of the employees working in an organization. They are the voluntary organizations who work for the workers, and they are basically delegated this task to work for them, and any dispute or any problem arises for the employees can be sorted out through them. And the aim of the trade union is to improve the pay of workers, improve working conditions, protect members' job, that is the employees' job, then to provide the different opportunities for promotion and training, then facilitate educational, cultural and recreational activities for the employees, and to provide local social and welfare facilities for the employee as well as for their family members, and they are also trying. They are also try to influence the government policy whenever such legal provisions need to be set. So this is all for today. Thank you very much.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a productive session on human resource management, where we discussed the key concepts and functions, as well as discussed on the employee and the employer's relationship. Dear friends, if you have any queries, if you feel so that you need a question to be answered, then do write to us at info.cc@nic.in. We would love to have your feedbacks on this particular lecture. So friends, we will be meeting again soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.